Here's the news I was alluding to, and this coming earlier today. Liv Golf has officially withdrawn their application for official World Golf Ranking points. Liv first applied for OWGR points July of 2022. They were formally denied by the OWGR last October. A letter was sent to Liv players competing in Hong Kong this week by Greg Norman, which said, in part, a resolution which protects the accuracy, credibility, and integrity of the OWGR rankings no longer exists. We have made enormous efforts to fight for you and to ensure your accomplishments are recognized within the existing ranking system. Unfortunately, the OWGR has shown a little willingness to productively work with us. Having refused to recognize your performances over the last few seasons, the OWGR is not an official and cannot be an official ranking. This decision will remove any ambiguity about its relevance. The game of golf is changing, it's expanding and modernizing. Liv Golf believes that it is time for the player rating system to do the same, and we believe that an entirely independent ranking system would best serve the league, tours, players, fans, and stakeholders. With more on this news, let's welcome in Todd Lewis, who is on site at Bay Hill. Todd, what are the guys saying about this at the Arnold Palmer Invitational?
Well, first you have to understand what the official World Golf Ranking is on the global stage. It is used to measure which players get into all the major championships. Now let's look at the PGA Tour. There have been 9 tournaments on the PGA Tour so far this season. I'm not going to count Nick Dunlap's win because he was an amateur ranked at the time outside the top 4,000 in the official World Golf Ranking. But of the other 8 winners on the PGA Tour, the average world ranking 73. Only one top 10 player has won on the PGA Tour this season, and that is Wyndham Clark at Pebble Beach, and that was a 54-hole rain-shortened event. I actually caught up with a couple of important players today, and I asked them, what does that world ranking of the winners say about the competition on the PGA Tour?
The competition is obviously very stiff. I mean, there's no question about it. We've had quite a few first-time winners on tour this year. You've got some tenured guys that are contending week in, week out. You know, the official World Golf Ranking is what it is right now. But I also think that the competition that we have is pretty stiff. I mean, you know, it's really good to see guys like Nick especially come up, and it just shows you the golf climate that we're in with kids in college coming up and playing that great. But, you know, I think that when you look at over the last few years and seeing the first-time winners and playing as well as they have, I think that's something that I'm more excited about, because on any given week you can see someone just pop off a win.
I want to follow up on what you hinted at in regards to the World Golf Rankings. Mm-hmm. How viable is that measurement?
You know, it kind of is what it is. I mean, you see what Joaquin's done this year, and he's 73rd in the world. I'm not a guy who's on the policy board or involved with those rankings, but the guy's played some really good golf. And I think, you know, having to get a special exemption from Augusta, you know, it's just, there's some really good players, and there's some guys that have gone around the world and played really good golf. And I think that's something that once we get to the majors will be really fun to have us all back together. But I know that that's kind of the utopian goal for all of us right now, is to have the best players in the world play week in, week out. And I mean, I love this week in general because we've got the best players on the PGA Tour, and we've got guys that obviously really care about it. But I also think, you know, we'll see what happens going forward. I don't have a fix for it. I know some guys have voiced their opinions on it. I like staying out of that stuff, but you know, it's right now it's in an interesting position. I'll leave it at that.
There's a lot of strength and depth on this tour. You know, this is absolutely no disrespect to the winners because they've played better than me this year, but I don't think the world rankings are a true representation of the golf game at the minute. But I don't really look at them or pay attention to them anymore. I just don't think they're right. So I look at data golf as a better representation of how people are playing in the world, in my opinion. But yeah, I think it is partly a sign that, you know, that there's plenty of depth on here, and which we've known that for years anyway on the PGA Tour. There's always been a lot of strength in depth, but I certainly think nowadays the ranking side of it is a little bit skewed.
Well, what's off about it?
Well, I mean, it's missing a lot of the top players for one. I had a great conversation actually with Billy Schroeder from the OWGR, and he explained a lot to me, which made a lot of sense about the world ranking points, why Liv doesn't have them yet, which made a lot of sense to me. And I think even though it is, given what he explained to me was the right decision, I don't think it's right to not have these players have involved in the world rankings. I mean, what's Dustin Johnson in the world? I don't even know. Like, it's, Brooks Koepka. I just think that's the only issue at the minute, in my opinion, with the World Golf Rankings. I think Data Golf, like I say, is a better representation of where the game is.
And you heard Matt talk about Data Golf. That is a website that has a lot of statistical information when it comes to professional golf, including its own world ranking system that includes Liv golfers. You talk to a large majority of players out here, and I would say that there's a pretty good volume of those players that feel like the official World Golf Ranking is not a true representation of the talent on the professional stage. The question is, how do you fix that? I mean, Liv Golf plays only 54 holes compared to the players here that play 72-hole events on the PGA Tour. It's pretty much a closed shop on the Liv Tour, where there's a lot of turnover in tournaments here on the PGA Tour. So that, indeed, is the challenge in regards to the official World Golf Rankings. Guys?
Thank you, Todd, and that's part of why they've been at a stalemate, seemingly, for 2 years. Your thoughts on how this has unfolded, where we're at this point that Liv is surrendered, in a sense, saying we're not getting world ranking points, we're not even going to keep the dialogue going with the OWGR going forward?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. I think, first of all, I think it's a little bit disingenuous for Greg Norman to say that, quote, enormous strides were made by trying to appease Liv Golf with the official World Golf Ranking. The OWGR's biggest beef with Liv Golf was the fact that it was a closed shop. And all Liv has done is had this promotions event for 3 players, and they also added basically a hand-picked team, Jon Rahm's team, to fill out its roster. It does leave 2 pretty weighty questions that I don't think we have enough time to actually answer today. One is, what does it mean for player access to majors? And 2, what does this mean going forward for Liv's format? As it relates to the players, I do think it's interesting because now it provides some context, this decision, about the warpath that Bryce DeChambeau and Taylor Gooch and Joaquin Niemann have been on over the past couple of months, kind of discrediting the OWGR. Essentially, if you say it enough times, eventually it just becomes kind of accepted, and there's kind of this revolt against the OWGR. The biggest issue as it relates to the world rankings, though, is that this issue has not really reached critical mass yet. In other words, who are we fighting about? We're fighting about Taylor Gooch, who at age 32 does not yet have a top 10 in a major championship. We're fighting over Dean Burmester and Lucas Herbert, who are inside the top 100 and yet do not qualify automatically for the major championships. This will only become a pressing matter for the major organizations when Bryson DeChambeau's major exemption runs out, when Dustin Johnson's major exemption runs out, when Cam Smith's or Brooks Koepka's could have this year had he not won the PGA. Until then, the OWGR can basically sit on their hands and wait for the landscape to shake itself out. That, to me, is what they're doing at the moment.
I would say 2 things are true here. One, Liv in no way put their best foot forward in constructing the league and trying to adhere to the existing official World Golf Ranking guidelines. So it's not exactly a surprise when people I had talked with on the inside at the outset said this would be a multi-year process, and in no way have they tried to have this be properly shaped and constructed to be awarded World Golf Ranking points, which is what Matt Fitzpatrick said, where he said, okay, I get why with the OWGR guidelines they were turned down. That being said, with the star power that they now have on Liv and the entire roster, there has to be some embrace for change and not just strict adherence to rigidity based on existing guidelines. I think it's wild that a league in which you have Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, Jon Rahm, Cam Smith all playing, they can't figure out a manner in which there are some semblance of world rankings going forward. And I do actually agree there should be an independent board it shouldn't be all the stakeholders overseeing these tours. They should be removed from it, and you should have a board of, say, 5 people representing the best interests of what would be a worldwide ranking going forward.
The same organization that shot down Liv's bid is the same one that's hosting the major championships. And so I agree. There certainly should be some sort of independence there. I think the official World Golf rankings are fair, but I think it's impossible to say that they're currently accurate. I think two things can be true.
They're fair but flawed.
Yeah.
Currently.
Fair but flawed. Right now, it looks very much like a PGA Tour ranking.